Hi, and welcome to the Joy of Tennis Teaching. Today's a topic that is near and dear to my heart. There's some history behind this topic. What I want to talk about today is how players get stuck and what it means to be stuck and how best to get unstuck. When I joined PBI in 1979, I had a pretty good collection of all the books that had been written on tennis instruction. I was already sure this was going to be my career, and my love of reading combined with the tennis boom of the 1970s, I had amassed a pretty good collection of tennis books, most of which I still have with me today. But when I met Peter Burwash and I started talking to him about tennis books, it became very obvious that he was more than a little bit skeptical about the value of tennis books. In fact, Peter felt that tennis books were one of the big reasons why tennis players got stuck. So during my training in 1979, the writer John Tullius joined in for part of our tennis PBI training program. Today it would be called, he was embedded with our training program for a few weeks. And John was in the process of convincing Peter that the two of them could do a tennis book that would not tell people how to play tennis, but would help them understand the game of tennis. And if they understood the game better, it would go a long way to helping them get unstuck. And that was the way John convinced Peter to do the book that became Tennis for Life. In my opinion, still the greatest tennis instruction book ever written. And the goal of Tennis for Life was just that, simply. How can we help to get players unstuck? And Peter felt very strongly that knowledge eliminated frustration, and that with better information, players could advance more easily and more rapidly. So let's talk a little bit about what it means to be stuck. Stuck could be a new player trying the game out and making no progress in spite of taking some lessons, because the lessons don't help them to understand the important parts of the game, but just really explain the mechanics of hitting the ball and don't get them over that initial hurdle of being able to keep the ball in play and play the game. We lose a lot of tennis players at this stage. They try tennis, but it can be difficult to learn. And with the wrong instruction, I believe it's impossible to advance and learn. So these players drop out very quickly. Another type of stuck is, let's say, players at the 3-5 level in their club playing league tennis. And they would love to get into that 4-0, 4-5 league. They see those games and they believe that they are a much more fun level. But despite all their best efforts, they can't advance past that 3-5 level. Another example of stuck is the junior player who's getting into the high school age and they're at about a 9 UTR, and they can't seem to find a way to win enough matches to advance to a 10 or 11 or a higher level that would aid them in getting a better tennis scholarship. Another level of stuck is the tournament player, the professional player, who is obviously highly skilled, obviously a good athlete, but again, they get stuck at a certain level. Maybe they've advanced all the way to the challenger level, but they're not able to make that big jump to the tour level player. So what causes these players to get stuck? I believe that it is much more of a mental hurdle than a physical hurdle. That the problem with players getting stuck has a lot more to do with their understanding of the game than it does with their ability to hit the ball. There's very few of us who advance all the way to our level of physical skill, and then we get stuck because we're just physically not able to compete at a higher level. I really, really believe that for most players, it comes down to they have limiting beliefs. These limiting beliefs keep them from advancing. Now, where do these limiting beliefs come from? Well, it comes from two places: bad information or bad assumptions. And I'll explain this by giving you an example. Bad information is the coach telling you that the toss is the most important part of the serve, and you should go home and practice your toss. And whatever you do, if your toss is good, your serve will be good. And the student incorporates that belief into their understanding of the game. But the problem is really their hand and wrist. They're hitting hand and wrist, and so they get stuck because their belief is limited by this myth that the toss is the most important part of the serve. That's what bad information can do. That's why on PBI we always believed that it was so important to train the coaches so that the coaches weren't out there hurting students. The second thing, when I say bad assumptions, this is where the players themselves extrapolate the wrong information from what they see and hear. They might be watching a lot of tennis on TV, and they hear the announcers talking about, oh, so-and-so has a problem with their toss on the serve. I hate this when announcers say this because not necessarily that they're wrong. They might be correct about that particular player having an issue with the toss, but they don't go into how to correct that problem, and they don't teach people the subtleties of what it really means to have a good or a bad toss. And so players make the assumption that, oh, I should have this type of toss, rather than looking at the serve in a more holistic manner. The players get stuck with the players get stuck with this bad belief, and it limits their advancement. So how can we change this? Well, first of all, we have to understand the game very well ourselves as teachers. And that's why I think the Tennis for Life book was such a brilliant book, because it helped understand the game at a more basic, fundamental, foundational level than anything else that had ever been written or has ever been written since. But then we also need to use the tools. And I've talked a lot about the listen, observe, teach, the LOT theory on teaching. But that's why I'm such a big believer in it. And it's so important to get the listen, observe part right. Because at its foundational level, the whole purpose of listening to the students and asking questions is to understand what's in their head. What do they believe about the game? The observe phase is to see what they're actually doing and compare what they're doing to what they believe. And that gives you the best clue of all on how to make an impactful change in your students. I don't like absolute statements, but I'm going to make one right now. I absolutely am sure that your students cannot improve if they have limiting beliefs. And you as a teacher, if you can't change those beliefs, it does not matter how great your instruction is. We've all seen the student that comes out and performs well in the lesson because we're telling them what to do, and they're receptive, and they're listening, and they're doing it, and they're getting good results. But unless we change the underlying belief, what happens when they go back out and play their game is their game shifts back to what they believe rather than what they actually did in the lesson. So by far, your number one job as a tennis teaching professional is to understand what your students believe about the game, to see where that is limiting them, and then to make your best efforts to change them to beliefs that will allow them to improve. So I hope this helps you. And good luck out there. Keep enjoying your students. Keep enjoying those lessons. And before I close off, I would like to ask you to do something for me. If you haven't subscribed to the channel, but you just watch it, please subscribe. I'm getting such great feedback from people that are enjoying the videos, but our analytical numbers aren't there. So smash that subscribe button and hit the like button as well. And if you're getting all the way to the end of these videos and you hear this, I hope we'll set a record for the most likes and the most subscribers from this video. Because getting unstuck is really the key to improving as a tennis player. Keep enjoying the joy of tennis teaching.